From the moment Jonathan Hale, one of the city's most powerful millionaires, carried his newborn son out of the hospital, the world assumed everything in his life was perfect, but behind the polished marble walls of his mansion, nothing felt perfect at all. Baby Liam screamed every minute of the day, cried whenever someone tried to hold him, and refused to sleep unless exhausted from hours of uncontrollable sobbing. Jonathan, already drowning in grief after losing his wife during childbirth, tried everything he could: doctors, specialists, expensive baby therapists, high-tech cribs that rocked themselves, lullaby machines worth more than most people's cars, but nothing calmed the child. The staff whispered that the house felt haunted, not by ghosts, but by the echo of constant wailing. Every nanny hired lasted no more than 3 days. Some quit by evening. Some left mid-shift. And a few broke down in tears themselves, running out with shaking hands and nerves shattered. Jonathan blamed himself. He believed Liam cried because he sensed his father's fear, his loneliness, his cracks hidden beneath expensive suits and emotionless expressions. Every night Jonathan would sit on the nursery floor, holding his head, whispering apologies to the screaming child he desperately wanted to love but didn't know how to comfort. One rainy morning, after the latest nanny quit only 2 hours into her shift, Jonathan's housekeeper hesitantly suggested hiring someone different, someone without the fancy degrees or polished resumes, someone named Mira, a young woman who had been begging for a cleaning job but had experience with infants. Jonathan, exhausted and desperate, agreed without hope. When Mira arrived, she stood awkwardly in the hallway, wearing a simple maid uniform and holding a second-hand cloth bag. But the moment she heard Liam's screams echo from upstairs, something in her face softened with worry, not fear, not frustration, but something gentle and almost instinctive. Jonathan motioned toward the nursery, embarrassed to show yet another stranger his failure. Liam was kicking and screaming in his crib, his tiny face red, his arms flailing. Jonathan began to apologize in advance, warning her that he understood if she couldn't handle it, but Mira walked past him slowly, her eyes never leaving the panicked baby. She leaned over the crib, whispered something so soft Jonathan couldn't hear, and then, like magic, Liam stopped screaming. His sobs softened into small hiccups. His fists loosened, his legs relaxed. Mira gently lifted him, and instead of crying harder like he always did with others, Liam pressed his face into her shoulder as if he had known her forever. Jonathan froze. His jaw tightened. His chest tightened. For the first time since the day Liam was born, the house fell silent. Mira didn't seem surprised. She held the baby, pacing softly, humming a melody so tender Jonathan felt it in his bones. When she finally laid Liam on her chest and he fell asleep, actually asleep, Jonathan had to blink away tears he didn't expect. In the following days, Jonathan watched something impossible unfold in front of him. Liam continued to scream with everyone else, doctors, staff, visitors, even Jonathan himself, but the moment Mira stepped into the room, everything changed. Liam reached out for her. He smiled. He rested peacefully in her arms for hours. He slept through the night. He ate calmly. He laughed for the first time, a sound so pure that Jonathan almost collapsed to the floor when he heard it. The staff began whispering that she must have some magical power, a gift that went beyond logic. But Mira simply shrugged, saying she didn't do anything special. Jonathan couldn't understand it. Why her? Why this young maid who walked miles every day because she couldn't afford a bus ticket? Why did his son trust her more than anyone? One night, Jonathan found Mira in the nursery humming a lullaby while Liam slept peacefully on her lap. He leaned quietly against the doorframe, watching her hands move gently through the baby's hair. When she finally noticed him, she apologized, thinking she had overstepped. But Jonathan shook his head, lowering himself slowly onto the nearby chair. For the first time in months, he didn't feel like a failure. "How do you do it?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Why only you?" Mira hesitated before answering. She looked at the sleeping child, her eyes filling with the sadness she usually hid. "Because I know this cry," she said quietly. My little brother used to cry the same way. He didn't make it. Jonathan's breath caught. Mira explained how she raised her brother alone when her mother left, how the child was sick often, how she learned to comfort him because there was no one else. And how losing him left a hole in her heart she never thought could be filled, until she met Liam. Jonathan felt a sharp ache, the kind that happens when two broken pieces recognize each other. You saved him, he whispered. You saved me too. Mira smiled shyly, shaking her head, insisting she had done nothing extraordinary. But Jonathan saw things clearly for the first time. Mira wasn't just calming a baby, she was healing a family that had been shattered. As weeks passed, Liam grew more attached to her. Jonathan found himself growing attached too, not just to her gentle nature, but to the warmth she brought into the cold mansion. He found himself lingering whenever she was around, listening to her stories, watching the way she treated his son with love that felt genuine, not hired. One evening, after another peaceful day, Jonathan stepped into the nursery to find Liam asleep in Myra's arms again. The setting sun poured golden light across the room, illuminating her face. Something inside him stirred. He didn't want this peace to be temporary. He didn't want this woman to ever walk out of the mansion's doors. But he also feared saying anything would scare her away. Mira looked up and gave him a shy smile. He's getting so strong, she whispered. Jonathan nodded. Because he finally feels safe. Mira looked down at the child in her arms. Maybe he just needed someone who understands him. Maybe, Jonathan replied softly. Maybe we both did. Myra's cheeks flushed. She lowered her eyes, suddenly nervous. Jonathan walked closer, slowly, respectfully. Mira. I don't know how to repay you, he said gently. You came here as a maid, but you've become the person my son trusts the most. He paused. And the person I trust the most. Myra's eyes filled with tears. No one had ever said such words to her. Not in years. Not ever. Before either of them could speak again, Liam stirred, but instead of crying, he simply reached out his tiny hand toward Jonathan. Jonathan took his son into his arms, and for the first time ever, Liam stayed calm. He looked between his father and Mira, then rested his head against Jonathan's chest. Mira gasped softly. Jonathan looked at her with wide eyes. Liam had never done this before. The meaning was clear. Liam finally felt safe because she had taught him how. Jonathan felt a surge of emotion, gratitude so deep it left him breathless. Mira, please don't ever think you're just a maid, he whispered. You're the reason my son can finally sleep. You're the reason I can finally breathe. Mira covered her mouth, tears slipping down her cheeks. And in that moment, Jonathan made a silent promise to cherish the woman who had healed his home, to protect her, and to never let her walk through life alone again. Outside the nursery window, the rain had stopped. The night was calm. For the first time, their hearts were too. And as the camera fades, viewers realize something powerful. Sometimes the person who enters your life at your lowest is the one who was meant to stay forever. If you enjoyed this emotional story and want more heart-touching, twist-ending dramas like this, make sure to subscribe, like, and share this video so we can bring you more powerful stories every week.